He left without warning. No goodbye, no explanation, no slow unraveling I could prepare for. Just absence, sudden, sharp, and final. One day he was there. The next day, he was gone. At first, I thought the worst pain was the leaving itself. The shock of emptiness, the bed that stayed cold, the phone that stayed silent, the silence that screamed louder than any argument ever could. But the truth, the real wound, wasn't the leaving. The real wound was knowing. My soul had been whispering long before, and I didn't listen. I saw the signs. The way his eyes stopped meeting mine, the way his voice lost warmth, the way his touch felt more like obligation than desire. I felt the unease in my chest, the tightness in my stomach, the quiet grief that settled in my bones before he was even gone. But I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself love was supposed to feel heavy sometimes. I told myself commitment meant enduring the silence, excusing the distance, rationalizing the whispers. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happened. My unconscious, my soul was speaking all along, but because I ignored it, I mistook destiny for disaster. I mistook intuition for paranoia. I mistook the whispers for noise. And so when he finally left without a single word, I felt betrayed. Not just by him, but by me. Because I already knew, I had always known, but I didn't want to believe it. Before I take you deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt it too? That quiet, unshakable whisper inside you that something wasn't right, even while everything on the surface looked fine? Tell me in the comments, have you ever ignored your soul's whisper only to watch the truth unfold later? And tell me where you're watching from. Because no matter how alone you feel, these whispers connect us across oceans, across stories, across heartbreaks. The hardest part wasn't that he left. It was that I had abandoned myself long before he abandoned me. That's what silence does. It builds like fog. You don't see it until you're surrounded, but your body feels it. Your chest knows it. Your soul whispers it. And the whisper said, "This love is ending. Prepare your heart." But I didn't. I smiled. I carried on. I begged myself to believe, and then he was gone. That's the hook of this story. But it's not the ending, because this isn't just about a man who walked away. This is about a soul that was speaking, and finally being heard. When someone leaves without warning, the first thing you feel is shock. The brain races to fill in the blanks. Why? Was it me? Did I miss something? How could everything look normal one day and collapse the next? But here's the thing. The leaving is never truly sudden. The body knows. The soul knows. The whispers are always there, long before the storm breaks. For me, the first whisper came in the form of silence at the dinner table. He was there, but his eyes weren't. His plate was full, but his mind was empty, and my chest tightened just for a moment. Another whisper came at night, lying next to him. His breathing was steady, but his back was turned. And I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, with that strange ache of being lonelier beside someone than you've ever been alone. But I told myself, this is just what relationships become. People change. Comfort is silence. No, comfort is not silence. Comfort is presence. Comfort is when silence feels safe, not suffocating. And I knew the difference. My soul did. But I buried it. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." I had been dreaming that if I tried harder, smiled wider, stayed softer, he would come back, not physically but emotionally. I looked outside for reassurance, but inside I already knew. The day he left, I replayed every whisper, every unease, every moment my body screamed and I silenced it, and I realized the leaving wasn't sudden. The leaving had been happening for months, quietly, slowly, whisper by whisper. And maybe that's the cruelest part. Not the final act of walking away, but the erosion you feel in your soul while pretending everything is whole. Let me ask you something. Have you ever convinced yourself the whispers were just fear? Just overthinking? Just insecurity? Only to find out later that your soul was right all along? Because that's what intuition is. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And when you ignore the whisper, life will scream. The cost of ignoring my soul wasn't just heartbreak when he left. The cost was self-betrayal, because every time I silenced that inner voice, I told myself, you don't matter. Your truth doesn't matter. What you feel isn't real. And those words, spoken silently to yourself, cut deeper than any goodbye ever could. Jung believed that the soul communicates through symbols, dreams, and sensations. And I saw them all. The dreams of being abandoned, the feeling of doors closing in my chest, the symbols of distance in his gestures. But I chose blindness, because seeing would mean acting, and acting would mean risking loss. So instead, I lost myself. He left without warning, yes, but my soul had been whispering long before. And in that betrayal, not of him but of myself, I found the deepest wound. Because how can you ever trust another's love when you refuse to trust your own knowing? That's the question his leaving left me with. And that's the question I want you to sit with too. What whispers have you been ignoring? The deepest cut wasn't his absence, it was my own self-betrayal. When I looked back, I realized the leaving didn't hurt just because he disappeared. It hurt because I had disappeared from myself long before he walked out the door. I had felt the whispers, I had heard the warnings, I had sensed the unease. And every single time I told myself, no, stay quiet, don't be dramatic, don't ruin what little peace is left. But peace that costs your truth isn't peace. It's self-erasure. Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And I see it now. The pain of his leaving forced me into consciousness, but the pain of ignoring myself, that was the lesson. Every time I silenced my intuition, I told my soul, I don't trust you. Every time I dismissed the tightening in my chest, the pit in my stomach, the heaviness in my bones, I told my body, your knowing isn't real. And what happens when you tell yourself that for long enough? You forget how to listen. You forget how to trust. You forget how to belong to yourself. That was me. I didn't just lose him. I lost me. Let me ask you something. How many times have you abandoned yourself to hold on to someone else? How many times have you silenced the whisper just to keep the story alive? How many times have you said, it's fine, it's nothing, when you knew in your soul it was everything? That's the cost of self-betrayal. Not just heartbreak, but disconnection from the deepest part of you, the part that always knows. And when he left without warning, it was like the world ripped open and said, see, you always knew. It was cruel, yes, but it was also clarity. Because the truth is, I wasn't angry at him. Not really. I was angry at myself for ignoring what was true, for silencing what was sacred, for betraying the only voice that has never lied to me, my own. That's the thing about whispers. They don't vanish when ignored. They become grief. They become anxiety. They become exhaustion. They become the ache you can't name. And when he left, I had to face it all. The grief of his absence, yes, but also the grief of my own abandonment of me. So I began the slow, painful work of forgiveness. Not for him, for me. I wrote letters, not to him, but to myself. Letters that began with, I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I silenced you. I'm sorry I made you feel crazy for knowing the truth. And with every word, I began to reclaim trust. Not in him, not in love, but in me. Because here's the truth. When someone leaves, you don't just lose them. You gain a mirror, and the reflection shows you all the ways you've been leaving yourself long before they did. Jung believed the soul is always moving us toward wholeness, even through heartbreak. And maybe that's what this was. Not punishment, not betrayal, but a brutal invitation back to myself. So I whispered back, to the soul that had been whispering all along, I hear you now. I trust you now. I won't abandon you again. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like home. When he left, I thought I would never trust again. Not just men, not just love, but myself. Because how could I? How could I trust my own judgment when I had ignored the whispers, when I had silenced my knowing, when I had chosen blindness over truth? But that's when the healing began. Not in learning to trust others again, but in learning to trust me. Jung taught us that individuation, the path to wholeness, requires us to integrate the parts of ourselves we've cast aside. And for me, the part I had abandoned was my intuition. So I began learning to listen again. It wasn't easy. My head was noisy. My heart was messy. The grief was loud. But beneath it all, there was still a whisper, softer now, but alive. I practiced sitting in silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of attention. I turned off the distractions. I let the ache rise. And I listened. Sometimes the whisper said, rest. Sometimes it said, leave. Sometimes it said, this is safe. Sometimes it said, this is not. And slowly, painfully, I began to trust it. I wrote without editing. I let my pen move faster than my fear. I didn't filter. I didn't explain. I just let the truth spill. And in those pages I met myself again. The girl who knew. The girl who felt. The girl who always had the answers, but was taught to doubt them. And I told her, I hear you now. I believe you now. That was the turning point, because when you start to listen to your soul again, you stop needing proof from the outside. You stop begging for clarity from people who thrive on confusion. You stop searching for validation in places that only wound you. You learn to trust the whisper before life has to scream, and that changes everything. The next time someone's energy felt wrong, I didn't excuse it. The next time my chest tightened, I didn't call it anxiety. I called it truth. The next time I felt the ache of distance, I didn't wait for abandonment. I named it, and I chose me first. That's what healing looked like. Not perfection, not never being hurt again, but never again abandoning myself for the sake of someone else. Jung said, there is no awakening without listening to the unconscious, and my unconscious had been speaking all along. I just had to become quiet enough, brave enough, to finally listen. So that's what I did. I made listening a practice, a ritual, a promise. Every morning I asked, what do you need today? Every night I asked, what did you try to tell me? And slowly, the whisper became a voice, strong, clear, unshakable. So when life brought me moments of doubt, I didn't crumble. I paused. I listened. I trusted. And for the first time in my life, I felt safe, not because someone stayed, not because someone chose me, but because I did. And that was the love I had been waiting for all along. So here's the truth. He left without warning. But my soul had been whispering long before, and in the end, that's what saved me. Because I finally understood, people can leave, they can betray, they can disappear without explanation. But my soul never leaves. My soul always tells me the truth. My soul is the one companion I can't afford to abandon. Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For years, I called it fate. I called it heartbreak. I called it bad luck. But really, it was me ignoring the unconscious, ignoring the whispers, ignoring myself. Not anymore. Now, when my soul whispers, I don't drown it out. I don't call it insecurity. I don't label it fear. I lean in. I listen. I trust, Because every time I have ignored it, I've paid with grief, and every time I've honored it, I've been led home. So what did I gain when he left? Clarity, strength, trust, not in him, not in love, but in me. Because here's the secret. The point of heartbreak isn't to lose someone else. It's to return to yourself. And I did. I returned to the woman who always knew, to the body that never lied, to the soul that never abandoned me. And from that place, I can love again. But this time, it will be different. Because I'll never again sacrifice the whisper for the sake of the illusion. I'll never again betray myself to keep someone beside me. If they stay, it will be because they can meet me in my truth. If they go, it will not destroy me, because the only leaving that ever broke me was the leaving I did to myself, and I won't do that again. So if you've been through this too, if someone left you without warning, if you've been staring at the silence and calling it cruelty, hear me. Your soul knew, your soul still knows, and the greatest gift you can give yourself is to trust it now. That whisper, it's not your enemy, it's your guide. So listen, because the day you stop silencing your soul is the day you come home, and that is the real ending to this story. Not that he left, not that you were abandoned, but that you stopped abandoning yourself. Tell me in the comments, what has your soul been whispering to you lately? I want to know, because when we share these whispers, we realize we were never alone in them. Subscribe if this story touched you, because there are more stories like this, stories that don't just talk about heartbreak, but about the healing hidden inside it. Share this with someone who needs to remember, the whisper is not weakness, it's wisdom. And I'll leave you with Jung's words one last time. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. He left without warning, but my soul had been whispering long before, and now I am awake.